Hello again, Swindon Town fans worldwide. It is for the fans, by the fans, and do not adjust your smart TVs, do not adjust your tablets or your phones. It's not been a month since our last musings. It's only been just over a week, but so much has happened. We decided to do one again. What a weekend it's been. A great weekend to be a Town fan. We didn't lose. We've moved up a place. The Cassan was on fire. What more could you want? Joining me again, I'm pleased to say, ever-present Adam is here. Good evening, pal.
Good evening.
Fans' favourite Christian is with us again.
Oh yeah.
One of our favourite contributors, Joe, is back with us.
Hi, how you doing?
And we have a debutant in young Rich joining the team as well. Good evening.
Good evening, Fifey. How are we?
Very well, thank you, everyone. Thank you for asking. Where to begin, really, on what's happened since we all last spoke? Rich, I'll bring you in first as the debutant. Two meek performances, I think it's fair to say.
Yeah, for sure. I think Shrewsbury and Portsmouth are both very poor games to watch as a Swindon fan. But even if you weren't watching as a Swindon fan, as a neutral fan, it was just absolutely shocking either way. Neither game got going, and it was just poor all round, to be honest with you. No tactics, no nothing.
And was there any positives to take from it? I know it's difficult when it's defeats, especially in the situation we're in, but could you see any signs of style of play, alternative, like plan B? Could you see anything, even just players standing up for the mission of staying up?
I think with every game, I think there is a positive to take out of it. And I think what I would have said is that we didn't get any more injuries, but unfortunately we did. One was with Connor Masterson, which unfortunately now he's going to be out for the rest of the season, it looks like. So I don't know. I think I guess that we're not conceding as many goals. I mean, we conceded one against Shrewsbury, which I think is good. And obviously we conceded two against Portsmouth, one being a penalty. So I don't think, from a goals ratio from Swindon, from what we were conceding at the start of Sheridan's reign to what we are now, I'd say that's probably the only positive we've got coming out of these games.
Is that fair, Joe? If we're looking for any small glimmer, the fact that we aren't conceding as many goals?
Yeah, and I think as well, there seems to be a lot less individual howlers. There's still mistakes, little mistakes, but there's none of these absolute clangers that we've seen earlier in the season where people have fell over the ball and try and kick the ball in their own net and things like that. And but to counteract that, we've lost all our threat going the other way. So whereas at the start of the season, you fancied you could get a 2-2 or a 3-3 draw, if we let in two now, you can't see us. Well, you can't hardly see us scoring one, let alone two.
And Christian, how much do you think team selection has played a part in, predominantly, as Joe said, one shot on target in about 4 games?
It's not so much team selection; it's team formation. I just haven't got a clue what he's doing. We've looked quite. We've played one game with 4-4-2 and looked quite handy. And he's gone straight back to putting one up top, and the one up top is too slow. I don't know if I watched the Leeds game last week, and they interviewed Patrick Bamford afterwards, and they were asking about the manager and what he expects from them when he's up front. And if you've seen Leeds, it's constant pressure in the back four. And they said, "Why did you do that? Well, why did you wear yourself out to you're so knackered?" And he said it's because while you're doing that as a forward, you're pushing the back four, you're giving your midfield and your time to adjust and see what's going on, midfield and defence, time to adjust and see what's going on in front of them. We haven't got that. We can't. Brett Pittman, with the greatest respect, as one striker up front, he can't put the pressure on defence. That's why it's coming back at us so quickly. So team selection, not really got an issue with it, apart from the obvious Anthony Grant scenario, which we'll never get to the bottom of. But it's the formation's a big issue.
Adam, as the one amongst us with genuine coaching experience, do you see the same issues Christian's sort of mentioned there?
Yeah, I think, being a big Bielsa fan as well, I do love the way that Leeds play, albeit not really liking Leeds. But it's, I think when we look at, for me, the big change against Shrewsbury was the fact that he just didn't play Tyler Smith, which seemed to work the week before. And then bringing in, I think it was Jordan Garrick who played up front with him against Shrewsbury, who's not really a striker. So you're not really, but he is classified, if you go on the website, it's classified that we played 4-4-2. It didn't look like 4-4-2 against Shrewsbury. So I agree with Christian's point that Pittman, he could be a lone striker, but he needs that free behind him. He doesn't need, he can't be a lone striker in a 4-1-4-1 type system. He has to have almost a bit like the way Leeds used to set up, Man City used to set up. He needs someone to be able to hold the ball in who would then bring the wingers in. Last season, it would have worked because we had, the likes of Jerry Yates and players like that behind. And then going up to one up front against Portsmouth, I have no idea what that. In fact, I actually felt a bit sorry for Brett Pittman in that game because he's going back to his old club and he's almost been stitched up, to be totally honest. But I think it's quite funny because I'm sure we'll brush on the Bristol Rovers game, but one of the reasons that we didn't do the Bristol Rovers game or the rearrangement was because we had nowhere to train and nowhere to prepare. But the last two games, it hasn't looked like we've really prepared anyway. So it almost feels like they've gone in and just done some 6-yard passing drills for the past, for the past 3 weeks. Because now we can pass the ball 6 yards, but now we can't do anything once we've passed that ball 6 yards. And as Rich said, it was just really boring to watch. I paid money stupidly to watch the Portsmouth game, and I regretted it within about half an hour, to be totally honest.
You briefly mentioned there about the postponement of Bristol Rovers. Just briefly, what was everyone's thoughts on that? Can you understand? I mean, I know there were a lot of complaints. Initially, both sides, there were a lot of complaints. And then as time went on, a lot of complaints coming out of Bristol Rovers about the game being rearranged.
Yeah, I think from a Swindon side of things, from a fan's perspective, I think we all wanted to see the game go ahead. And I remember getting a couple of text messages coming through early Saturday morning saying that the game could be off because of the freezing temperatures. I thought, not so sure about that. And then at 11 o'clock, we got the notification saying that the game had been called off because of a frozen pitch. 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, Bristol Rovers are out training on their pitch.
I could see while Rich was talking there, Christian, you were sort of agreeing. I'm guessing you weren't a fan of it being called off either?
No, well, Michelle Owen from Sky was assigned that game, and she said there was nothing wrong with the pitch. If she says there's nothing wrong with the pitch, I'm going with that. But this no training ground. What's that all about? I had a pub in that part of Bristol. I used to drive it every day. Took me 45 minutes, 50 sometimes. Why couldn't we get anywhere to train before the game? Crazy. It should have been played on Sunday. And we got to wait 6 weeks for it now. It's ridiculous. I think,
and like you say, Chris, there's a big point there because I think I remember you said before where your pub was around by Filton area, wasn't it before? But it is 45 minutes away. So to be totally honest, I mean, I think there is something happening with the EFL. I think they might actually be investigating the referee's decision. But I don't get that it was going to 4 out. So why didn't they kick off later? There's no fans to worry about. There's no logistics around it. Why couldn't they kick off just later, as opposed to even not moving it to Sunday? The whole not training thing's a load of trash, to be totally honest. I think it was just an excuse to be awkward. But now we're going to play a game on a Tuesday night in a very important part of the season. that will be a relegation battle game now. That will be, without doubt. It will be, that could be a deciding game, which hopefully, with our record of derbies at the moment, it might work in our favour. But I just think that I thought it was ridiculous. It's irritating for me because I hate it as a coach. I hate it when my games are called off for frozen pitches, especially when I've had to call a game off because of a frozen pitch. And I just think there's so many kids, young adults, everybody out there that wants to play football. And then we're coming up with excuses like that to say, oh, there was nowhere to train. Well, what's wrong with Foundation Park? Was that fully booked? Could Swindon not take priority over the own bit they own? It just really surprised me that they couldn't travel 45 minutes down the road. Obviously, Sheridan had promised his other half something for Valentine's Day, so that's the only thing I could come up with.
Joe, something Adam said there, which I think could play a crucial part in the whole conversation, is not extending it to a later kickoff or even playing it on the Sunday means in a season where everyone seems to be complaining about a fixture pileup, we've now got another game crammed in when we could have had it quite conveniently placed.
Well, yeah, that's exactly right. And it's just, as the others said, it's just daft, really, wasn't it? Like I say, the players, Swindon's players were probably on the way to Bristol at that time of day, probably going for lunch or whatever. I'm sure if they said, look, we're going to give it an extra hour to 4 out or an extra 2 hours to 4 out, do you mind kicking off at 5? I'm pretty sure everybody would have been pretty happy with that. But as we've said, to turn around and say that we can't play because we haven't got anywhere to train before the game, I think it's embarrassing, actually. And it's now like Woody's just said, like, we're gonna have a game, big fixture pile up at the end of the season. Who knows how many players are going to be injured or suspended or whatever. Bristol Rovers gonna have a new manager by then. Could be flying.
We're gonna have seven games in March now.
Well, there you go. Then I mean, it's going to be a busy time. It just baffled me. It really baffled me.
I mean, if you looked at the fixtures that we had around September, October time, I think October was our worst, wasn't it? And we had like 7-8 games during the month of October. And I thought the amount of injuries that we picked up during that time as well, we were crucified. We didn't know what to do. And wow, a lot of people were saying, me included, that was the result of our poor form. Obviously, later on, we found out that wasn't, and Sheridan seems to be the cause of it. But it's not good for either club, either way you look at it.
I think we managed to go somewhere in the realm of 10 to 15 minutes there before Adam said Sheridan, and then Rich piped up with the word Sheridan. I know it's a very emotive topic at the moment, so
it was just Stone. It was just Stone. Can you believe it? I'm a different Sheridan. Sorry.
Rich, I'll come to you first. There's obviously, with our situation, there is a lot of talk about the manager. Then you get the video footage coming out, which I'm sure you'll all have your own opinions on, whether his nature, the way he sort of gets his message across. Obviously, there was a lot of complaints with regards to the level and the volume of swearing, and whether you have an issue with that. You had the pre-match where there were quotes coming out, which I'm a big believer in believing in yourself and backing yourself to do your job effectively. But when he's coming out with things like he's always been a successful manager and 95% of players have always enjoyed playing for him, when you see what's going on at Swindon, and again, Rich, you can go first, is there anything there that tells you he is the right man that we need right now?
Listen, I mean, like, you can look at it from any different angle. Sheridan should not be a manager, full stop. I'll come on to the bit about him saying that 95% of the people liked him. I take it that we must be the only club that has never liked him. That's all I can think of. Like, are we the only 5% of teams that he has managed that none of our players like? I know Caddis came out on Friday as well saying that they back the manager. They don't back the manager. They've turned against him as well. He's just been a constant pro like he always has been, Paul Caddis. In terms of the swearing, I've got no issues with managers swearing. I think they have to obviously embrace and like put across their emotive. If you're swearing and you're emotional, that's great. Sheridan doesn't have that. He's saying it just for the heck of it. He's trying to get a spark out of his players by just telling them that they're shit, and it just doesn't work. It is old school. He might have been able to get away with that in the early 2000s, obviously in the 90s, early 2000s. But in this day and age, players are so much more sensitive these days. Not that that's a bad thing, but they obviously want to play good football. And at the moment, he's just shouting stuff for the hell of it, and we're playing rubbish football.
Joe, one of the words that's been bandied about Twitter a lot this past sort of 7 to 10 days is the word dinosaur. Now, listen, I'm not a professional football manager. The best I can do is, virtual reality management simulator games. But is it a case that his style of management is going out the window now?
Yeah, I think that it's a generational thing, isn't it? I mean, you look at Mourinho now. Mourinho doesn't seem to have the success that he had 10 years ago because football's changed, footballers have changed. I was watching something yesterday. I think it was yesterday or the day before with Harry Redknapp, and they asked him if he'd ever get back into management, and he admitted that he's past it. Basically, he's, his style is outdated, and I think that is the problem with Sheridan. I think he's managing now like he did 15 years ago, and players these days just don't like it. And I mean, I don't really have a massive issue with the language and things, but I mean, it looked bad the other night because obviously there was no commentary at the time, and he was stood right next to the microphones, and it was obviously enhanced through that. And obviously there's probably kids watching and whatever. But I mean, I've sat behind dugouts at grounds and heard far worse than that, to be honest.
Christian, I know when we've spoken previously, you've used a comparison, much like Joe said, the fact that there's no crowd has an impact on that because you can hear it. Location to the microphone means you can hear it that much more clear. But also, people are reacting again because of the situation we're in. And I know you've said in the past, if you go back to when we had Di Canio and we were a lot more successful, if he was doing it, people wouldn't have an issue, would they?
Yeah, absolutely. The situation you're in, he's just not helping himself at all because everyone, if it was Di Canio on the back of a few wins, everyone would be going, "Hey, lad, Di Canio, hey," you know what I mean? Giving Paul Benson a slap round the head or something. Everything is brilliant. Punch a dog out, not a problem. You're losing and you can't hit a cow's ass with a banjo. You don't want to be doing that and drawing attention to yourself. Back cool.
Adam, again, I'll come to you for the coaching element of it, which I like to ask you about. I do find it interesting to get into the psyche. Take the swearing aside out of it. A lot of people had issues with the actual information and instruction being given, that it was just A, nonsensical, B, not helpful, and C, lacked anything that resembled genuine tactical nous.
Yeah, I think I don't have a massive issue with swearing. I'm not a professional manager by any chance. I do like these calls because it builds me up like I am some sort of professional. But I don't have an issue necessarily with the swearing. It's the fact that throughout that whole game, I'm quite happy to be corrected, but I did not hear a single tactical instruction out of his mouth or a single coaching point. And we're in a changing time. Okay, there's a reason like why Warnock doesn't have big teams anymore, and and things like that. but that time will come around again. The management style just works in circles, depending on what the FA are telling their coaches to do in the coaching courses. Rich will know. Rich has been on coaching courses as well. That now it is about being really fluffy. It is about, it's about saying what could you do better as opposed to you've done something wrong. But for me, the big irritation was the fact that all the way through that game, it was you've done this wrong, you've done this wrong, you've done this wrong. Like, leave that for half time, or leave that until you pull the player aside. You've got he knows there's no crowd there, so he's gonna get picked up. The big thing that irritated me the most, I think it was Payne had a shot, and it was quite close, to be totally honest. It was off target, but it was quite. And he said, "Hit the target, hit the target." The guy's 25 yards out. Like, if he's hitting the target every time from 25 yards out, he isn't a League One player. So I just think that, yeah, okay, when Di Canio was doing it, apart from it probably being a little bit of his style and his personality with him being Italian, but he was getting results. So he almost had the right to do it. And he had his management style was working. We're here in Sheridan slating his players, and he's come out last week and said, "I've always managed this way," yet he's never really been successful. So obviously his management style doesn't work. And for me, it never looks good on any manager, regardless of who you are, if your players are willing to really have a go at you back in the football, in the actual game, like Thompson did. That never looks good. I hate it when my players do it to me, and I coach in the 5th tier of women's football. So I hate it when they do it to me, and I can't slap them. So it's but it's what he's delivering, what information he's giving. I don't see any. That's the big thing.
I think it's fairly clear and evident that you guys particularly do reflect and represent quite a large proportion of the fan base. You're all pretty much Sheridan isn't the right man. I know when we've spoken previously, and I'll ask you all your opinions. Christian, I'll ask you first. We've spoken about Peacock stepping up. We've spoken about who the right sort of character maybe to bring in, and I threw a name last time saying Joey Barton. What's your view on it? If we are, and let's face it, none of us believe that he's going anywhere, but if he was, who would you like to see take the reins for the rest of the season?
Okay, for the rest of the season, based purely on the qualities, the qualifications, the UEFA qualifications, everything that he has, I'd say Lee Peacock to the rest of the season. I think he's the most qualified of all the coaches. He's quite outspoken about the way that training happens at the moment, and I don't think he's a big fan. He's got a lot of ideas, so him until the end of the season. But going forward, we have to remember it's Swindon Town, whether it be Di Canio, even McMahon, Macari, Ardiles, Hoddle, Wellens, young, hungry, driven managers. That's what we need. Young, hungry, driven, possibly first appointments that might leave us in 18 months to 2 years. That's fine. We don't own these people. It's not a relationship as such. Let them go. We're in that situation now where we need somebody that's going to do a job for 18 months to 2 years to try and better themselves to move up the pyramid. If they get us in the championship on the way and leave us when we're mid-table, or fair enough, that's not a problem. So Joey Barton doesn't fit that description as a first appointment. It would be a second appointment for him now, but you could tell he'd be hungry for it. He'd be exactly the sort of nasty bastard that you need in there. And he'll want to prove a lot of people wrong. So yeah, I like that idea. I like that suggestion, but it does need to be somebody young, hungry, and driven.
What's your thoughts on the subject of potential replacement managers, Rich?
Yeah, I certainly agree with Joey Barton as a top contender to take over. I just think, as Christian said, he's young, he's hungry. Yes, it is a second appointment, but he will want to prove managers wrong. I could be mistaken. I'm pretty sure he's favourite for the Bristol Rovers job, but I actually don't think they'd be able to actually afford him. So I don't know.
We can.
Well, yeah, this is it. Anybody can afford him. I'm not sure, but yeah. You look at other managers that could be in the mix. You've got your Ian Holloways, you've got your Keith Curls, and as I say, you know, they're past it. They don't want to manage. Well, they do want to manage, but they don't want to manage at that level. They're not hungry for it. You do want a young manager that's gonna kickstart Swindon again and get them out of this hole. And Keith Curl and Ian Holloway are not the managers that you want. I definitely would say Jerry Barton for me. Lee Peacock, I don't know an awful lot about how many coaching badges he's done. I know he's been coaching for an awful long time since he's retired. He's never actually had a professional club, managed a professional club as far as I'm aware, or has he managed in the conference?
Didn't he go assistant, or he was something at, was it Eastleigh or
Eastleigh? He was a coach at Eastleigh, yeah, when they knocked us out of the FA Cup he was coach.
That's right. I thought he had, but still he hasn't been that manager. Now, could he fit that bill? I don't know, but we do need somebody young and hungry. That's all I do know.
Joe, by all means, discuss some of the names that have already been bandied about there, but something else I wanted to ask you. And I know it wouldn't necessarily be a popular choice, and we have been there and done it before. But if he was to go, you know, imminently, would there be a case for experienced members that have been out in the cold a little bit, like your Caddises, like your Grants, maybe just taking charge for a little while, even on a caretaker basis?
Not for me. As much as I love Paul Caddis, and I'm sure Paul Caddis would probably do it if he was asked to, but I think we need that experience on the pitch at the moment. You know, Caddis, his legs are going, but when he's on the pitch, we seem a much more balanced side, much more threat going forward. What's happened to Anthony Grant, who knows? But, you know, I absolutely love the bloke. And again, he's probably one that would happily do it if he was asked to. But I don't know. I just think we need their experience on the pitch at the moment. I think that's more important. Lee Peacock, I think Lee Peacock is going to be a future Swindon manager at some point. I don't think at the moment, but maybe 2 or 3 years down the line. The one I quite fancy, I don't know what the other guys think, but he's been doing really well in the conference for a few years, is Luke Garrard at Boreham Wood. He's young, he's really young, but he's got experience as well, and you know, I'm sure he'd be pretty hungry to have a go at the Football League, and he's obviously come through our youth academy as well, so he's got some sort of links with the club, and I think he's done a really good job there on a really low budget, and I think he might be one that's worth it.
I think Joe, sorry to interrupt, I do agree with you, but I think he'd be the sort of appointment if we had been maybe sat in the middle of League One for 2 or 3 years, where we're looking to do something different. I don't disagree with you. I think he's got a lot of qualities, and he has done it without a lot of money behind him. But at the moment, I think it's got to be, do you know what I mean? That really nasty bastard sort of manager. If that makes sense.
I mean, that's probably what they tried with Sheridan, though, wasn't it? And it's not really working. So, I don't know. It's tricky, isn't it? I mean, I think it's one thing being a nasty bastard, as you say, but you've got to have the organisation of a team and other things as well. So, I mean, Joey Barton did a great job at Fleetwood. So, you know, out of all the names that are around at the moment, I would say he'd be my first choice. But as I say, I think Garrard would be worth a shout. But Christian's probably right. He's the sort of manager that if we're a bit stagnant for a couple of years and nothing's really happening, then you take a punt on him just to try and mix it up a bit. But I think it's all irrelevant anyway, because Sheridan ain't going to go anywhere, is he?
Adam, last question with regards a potential new manager. Given how deep we are into the season and there are no more transfer windows, is there still potential, if we got any of the names that we've suggested, or any perhaps that you've heard that we haven't spoken about, could we still get that, that mythical new manager bounce?
Yeah, and I think the thing is now is we're now battling. They're battling two things. They're battling the fact that we've lost Wellens. We want to get rid of Sheridan. So they, whatever the next appointment is, they've got to try and please the fans with it. Which is why I think if it's to the end of the season, I agree with Christian. It could be, Peacock could be the answer if it's to the end of the season, because I definitely wouldn't, because I was a big fan when he played, but nobody would want to be against him. Like if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, and we can't blame him for picking up a crap team. I don't like Jerry Barton, so I struggle to agree with that one. But I don't know. It depends what we classify as young as well, because I would say that a young manager is anybody under the age of 45, really. So you've got people out there like Jason Tyndall as well. Didn't do a bad job with Bournemouth, let's be honest. And it's whether he would take the step down, I don't know. But he hasn't really had that managerial grit yet. So I would just because I like attacking football, and I know he would bring attacking football, that would probably be somebody I'd be looking at. But then if you're looking under the age of 45, you've still got, if you want a horrible sod, you've got Danny Cowley. I don't think he would really do a massive job here, but he probably would keep us up. But he would probably also be very expensive. So just because of his mass ride to fame. But then who else is there? There's like Gary Monk as well. I think he's unemployed at the moment. It just depends how ambitious we want to be. And unfortunately, I think whilst the power that be is in charge, I don't see us being overly ambitious. But if we can stay up this season and get this ownership thing out of the way, I wouldn't be surprised if we end up with new owners. I wouldn't be surprised if we get a better name come through the door once this ownership debacle's over.
The last thing I want to touch on with regards to the current setup in terms of manager and style before we move on is obviously we heard that there were 3 players that were set to be dropped from the Bristol Rovers game because they turned up late for the team Zoom meeting. It's just another sort of story. I don't know if you agree, but as a fan, you just look at and you shake your head. Yes, that there's a bit of disappointment in maybe the players turning up late for the meeting, and you can understand the manager being a bit miffed with it. But in the situation we're in, depending on, everyone's sort of bandied rumours about as to who the players might be. But if they're 3 of your critical players, you're not going to drop them for the sake of 10 minutes on a Zoom meeting, are you?
Yeah, look, we can't afford anything at the moment. We need our best players playing, and unfortunately, one of our best players has been isolated out of the squad. So I think it doesn't matter who they are. Find them. I know other clubs have their protocols. If you're late to training, you're late to a meeting or whatever, it's like £100 fine or something like that. Slap them on the wrist. Just tell them, look. You're late, right? Make sure you don't do it again. £100, £200 fine, whatever it is, and just get on with it. Because at this time, it's critical, and we are in a critical position where we could still get out of, because every other team is falling, dropping points as well. What are you doing? Don't make silly threats like that and purposely get us relegated.
I think that's the exact point, really, is the fact that if Sheridan had come out and said they've consistently been late, for me, being late to one meeting is not a reason to drop a player. There are, as I think I've mentioned before offline, that players turn up late for meetings all the time in professional football. It's just the culture we're in. Now, I don't believe that. How long Sheridan been with us now? 2 months, 3 months, 4 months. Yeah, nearly 4 months. You telling me that players haven't been late for meetings in that whole time? I'm sorry, that's definitely not the case. So if he had turned around and said these 3 players have now constantly been late, we find them, then yeah, that's fair enough. But I just think he was giving it the big I am by saying I'm dropping these 3 players. And probably, I bet one of them thinking now that Masterson's unavailable, I bet one of them was a defender, which is probably why he said he didn't want to play on Sunday. So it's probably all starting to knit together now. But I just think, don't give it the big I am. I'm going to drop these 3 players that didn't turn up at a meeting and then not bother telling us who they are. Because if you're going to publicly shame players, you publicly shame players. You got to go one way or the other. You don't go, we're going to drop these 3 players because we don't know who those 3 players are. Doesn't make a difference to us.
Yeah, no, I agree, because picking up on a couple of points you've said there, we've spoken, I think it was the last show we did, we spoke about how he seems very content to throw players under the bus. And I'm sure I've read or I've heard on an interview somewhere, excuse me, I'm sure Paul Caddis said that one of his responsibilities since he's come back is that he's the one that goes around the dressing room and, he sorts the fines and stuff out. So making sure all the players pay them. I can't see why it couldn't just be dealt with in normal. For me personally, it was more getting an excuse in early that when we lose, this is why, and then blame the players. If I can, and Christian, I'll come to you first on this one, is about, we quite rightly to a point put a lot of blame on the manager, as is the way in football. But at some point, the players need to take a certain level of responsibility as well. I mean, I know it was said in an interview about how it was spoken about, they put balls into the box, so don't give away stupid free kicks. First thing we do is give away stupid free kicks, and we give ourselves these mountains to climb by conceding early. I know that you've kind of rescinded on it since, but you weren't happy with Conroy's recent post-match. The players do have a certain level of responsibility for the situation we find ourselves in as well, don't they? Christian?
Sorry, I was on mute then. Yeah, no, of course they do, but it's the same. It's the same in any job, anywhere in life. I run a restaurant. We all do different. We all run different jobs. At the end of the day, the buck stops with you as a manager, and if those players are not doing what you're asking them to do as a manager, you have to question whether you're doing your job role, or because if you don't, there's always somebody the next step up the ladder that is going to be focusing on you. So your team, whether you're running a restaurant, running a football team, or running a shift in Weatherspoons, your team have got to work for you. So, and just to touch on the thing with the previous point you made about this team meeting. I mean, I'm sorry, I disagree. I think the players are in the wrong there. If your rules are you attend a meeting, a Teams meeting, a video meeting, you bloody attend it.
Well, I do have to admit that I am set to give you a £10 fine for turning up after everyone else for this.
I was watching a bit of Kevin Horlock on another podcast.
Rich, just touching on the subject of the players, do you agree that there is a certain level of responsibility on them as well?
Look, I mean, there's always a responsibility on a player. I mean, like Christian said, if you're told to turn up for something, you bloody do it. I think in this case, I agree with you. I think Sheridan's just trying to give it the big I am. You listen to me, you do what I tell you to do. Of course, you're supposed to do what the manager tells you to do. That's why he's the man in charge. Do I think Sheridan should be the man in charge? No, I don't. Does that mean you go against what he says? No. Because at the end of the day, he's still, unfortunately, as many of us don't want him to be in charge, he is unfortunately the man in charge. So you can't do that. You can't risk your own career for somebody that you currently do not like.
We usually end these with a look ahead to the next game, but there is something else I want to touch on towards the end. But Adam, as I keep putting you last, I'll ask you first this time about what you think on whether just the next game or the next couple of games. What are you hoping to see and what are you expecting to get out of them? Adam,
there's my fine. I'm dropped for the next 3 games. There's what I want to see and what I'm expecting to see are probably completely other ends of the spectrum. So we got Crewe and Lincoln, haven't we? I think Lincoln away is never easy, regardless if there's a crowd or not. I think Crewe at home's winnable, but then I've said a lot of games have been winnable this year. So it's just too difficult to predict now. I think we are in a stage where we just don't know what's going to happen next. The keeper situation is going to flare up again because obviously Travers was recalled. Will he come back? We've got the 7-day emergency loan, which we're only allowed to do a 7 day at a time anyway. And will Bristol City? Is it Bristol City we got the guy from? Will they want to keep him here for another 7 days? And I would just like to just try and see a shot on target would be lovely. But I just want to see us attack a bit more. To be honest, when you're in a relegation battle, you're gonna concede goals. When you're down the bottom end of the table, you could defend with 10 men and 1 goalkeeper. You will still concede goals because of where we are in the table. So let's just try and outscore the opposition now. We've got, if anything, our best players are in the attacking side of the lineups. So we should be scoring goals. I don't care if we have 25 shots from 25 yards and 3 of them are on target and 1 of them's a goal. We might as well just try and attack and just try and outscore now, as opposed to, trying to block and then getting a counter on the 1-0 where, the wingers have gone on and Pittman's still at the halfway line because he's trying to catch up. And it's just pointless. Let's just have some sort of game plan. Our attackers are our attackers. Our midfield are creating the game and our defenders are defending. I don't want to see our attackers having to come back into our first third or even our second third. Just let everybody do their jobs and tell them what their jobs are. I don't know if Tommy Wright's helping now. I was quite a big fan of Tommy Wright when he was under Wellens. But I think we're maybe seeing how much Noel Hunt probably brought to the table now. But yeah, I just want to see a bit more attacking football, to be totally honest. If we're losing 2-1, 3-1, 3-2, but we've given it a go, I won't feel so bad if we go down. But if we play anything like we do, we're going to go down, and we would have gone down by playing rubbish.
Joe, I think Adam makes a good point. When you've been as lackluster as we have been in recent games, is it a case of winning 7-6 is a lot better than losing 1-0?
Yeah, exactly. And the thing I've never understood, right, since Sheridan's been here, he came in and he said, the team's conceding too many goals. We're making too many mistakes, we're conceding too many goals. So how does he set the team up? He sets the team up to sit back and defend. It doesn't make sense. He knows we've got talented players going forward. Brett Pittman, all right, he hasn't got the legs to run around. He knows where the bloody net is, though. If you get the ball to him in the 6-yard box, in the 18-yard box, more often than not, he's going to find the back of the net. It's a bit like not quite as consistent as Doyle last year, but similar-ish type of striker. But how many times do you see Pittman, who's, 32, 33, got a job to run, he's on his own up front with 40 yards of space before the next Swindon player? He can't do that. That's not his job. And I can't see. I mean, I'm with what Adam said, basically. Just, we need to go, even if we could just go gung-ho, go for it. And if you lose 5-4, you lose 5-4. But I'd rather lose 5-4 trying than losing 1-0 not trying.
One thing you said there, Joe, was obviously we were conceding goals before Sheridan came in. We've conceded more goals with Sheridan in than we did with Welland. So, as you say, sitting back, it's we've gotten worse than we were under Welland.
Anthony Grant would have closed that Shrewsbury goal down as well. That Shrewsbury goal from outside the box, Anthony Grant would have been on him. He wouldn't have got the shot away.
Sticking with you there, Christian, I could see you being fairly animated, hearing what Adam and Joe were saying about style of play and certain players. What are you hoping to see from the the next couple of fixtures, and can you see any possibility of us maybe getting 6 points out the next 2?
Because one of the games is Lincoln. No, I would settle it. I would settle for 4 points. Beating Crewe and drawing with Lincoln. I think, are they still, Lincoln are top, aren't they? The top or round about there?
They're definitely up there.
Yeah, they're good. They're a very good side as well. I'd settle for 4. But what the guys are saying about Pittman, you give the ball to Pittman in the 18-yard box, he'll score goals. he can't run around chasing the ball all over the bloody place, and then there's no one in the box. He needs to be in the box, heading the ball, turning on the ball, scoring goals. Use him to his strengths. Stop being a dickhead.
I completely agree with the sentiment about Pittman. You know, his track record speaks for itself. He knows how to score goals, and he has done it consistently at this level. So if he isn't doing it at Swindon, it's because Swindon aren't playing the right style for him. Rich, come to you finally on the next, the upcoming fixtures. What are you hoping to see? Maybe if you want to discuss style of play or the return of certain players into the fold?
Well, I think obviously we all want to see Anthony Grant back in. Regarding style of play, I think we've all gathered by now that obviously Sheridan doesn't have a style of play. It's literally have a go, see what happens, and hope for the best. But you want to see more fluency. You want to see more fluency in the play. You want to see them pass the ball, knock the ball about, get it in the final third. And if you're going to have a shot from 30 yards, which Payne has done, which Payne has proven he can do, and Scotty Twine, I don't know why I completely forgot about Scotty Twine. Say again?
I was just agreeing, yeah, Twine's more than capable of distance range shots. We've seen that all season.
Yeah, absolutely. Use his ability. He go down. If referees in this league, they're so they're straight on it. If you just get like a little tap on your shoulder, you go down, they're going to give you the free kick. They're really soft in this league. So get a free kick, 30 yards, get Scotty Twine, just blast it in the top corner. It's simple.
It's an easy game, football, isn't it?
Picking up on that point, though, what you said, Rich. Wellens had a successful team last year, right? But why was the team successful? Because he put 11 players on the pitch and he played them all to their strengths. So he put Anthony Grant in the middle of the midfield and he said, you kick everybody, you tackle everybody, your job is win the ball. And that's what he did. Doyle's job was stand in front of the post and stick the ball on the back of the net. Jerry Yates's job was run up and down the wing, run inside, outside, run wherever he could. He put 11 players on the pitch with a clear mission, a clear plan, and all the players were played to the best of their abilities and the best of their strengths. This year, we've had players out of position. We've had players trying to do things that they shouldn't be doing. And that's the big problem for me, I think.
Over the last sort of week, there were a number of open letters go out. And I'll be honest, as ever the positive, ever the optimist, when I saw the Swindon Town open letter to supporters, I got excited that something was going to happen. In the end, it was very much a dud of a letter. However, one that did catch my eye was the open letter from the Trust. I know when we've spoke about it previously, I described it as if it was a speech that someone was given, there'd be a flag waving in the background. But you could feel the passion and you could understand the intent behind it. And one of the messages in there was let's work together. So after what has been, and understandably so, a fairly negative conversation, let's sort of open the floor. What can we all do, big or small, to pull together? Adam, I'll ask you first.
Well, I think just all singing on the same hymn sheet now, that's the difference. Regardless, and I don't want to go into full-on debate about it, but beforehand there were people that wanted power in, power out, shake it all about, all of this kind of stuff. But now we're all on that we want the same thing. We do not want to be a League Two club again. We do not, and that's, we can't. We're too big. Our history is too good. We're still, there's a vast majority of fans still remember us in the Premiership. And we want to get close. If we can't get there, we want to get close to those days again. So I just think that, yeah, I agree with Trust's message. Let's pull together. Let's put a bit of pressure on the powers that be. That let's get a fan leadership on the board. And just because one thing that Wellens did really well was he had that Martin Ling approach where he managed the club from the top all the way down through to the bottom, through to the fans and everything. There's no reason why that has to go away just because we've got the dinosaur in charge. We can still try and engage. I do feel sorry for the STFC Twitter guy sometimes, because I just think he's fighting a losing battle, really. He's trying his hardest to get stuff out there, and it's always going to be stuff. But I guess just for us now, it's just about just trying to get as close as we can and behind as we can to stay in this league. And then once this ownership thing's dealt with, we can address it. And I'm hoping the trust, joint probably with the official supporters club. I mean, they're doing some great stuff as well, to be fair to them, the official supporters club, that we can just combine and then, really show that it could be a fan-based club. It could be a fan-owned club. There's no reason. I think the only thing that would stop it is the financials. But let's get it as close as we can. The stadium was a really good shout to start with, but that's disappeared. I had my £19.69 ready. In fact, I probably would have had twice that. I'm not going to try and work that maths out really quickly, but it's, and I just think let's just get behind the club now. We at the end of the day, nobody wants to see Swindon go under, regardless of who's in charge. Although it could probably work, but and I'm sure Christian probably alluded to. I know he's spoken before about having a contingency plan in place should something happen. So I'm not going to steal his thunder because I know he's probably going to mention it. So, but yeah, I agree with that kind of message as well. Let's have something ready just in case.
You've actually put it in quite well then, because I was going to ask Christian next, picking up on your point. I know having a fan on the board is something he's championed before, and having that contingency plan is something he's spoken about before. And I know it's still something you're very passionate about having in place, Christian.
Yeah, I mean, whatever go, because of the court case and the dates that we seem to be working around now, we're probably going to be stuck with Power for 9 or 10 months. He's going to go. What state he leaves the club in, we don't know, because something happens every single bloody day. There's always something different, Just last week, we're finding out that 600 grand of Swindon Town money is being used to pay towards, houses at this training ground. We must now work in these 9-10 months to have a contingency plan in place. We must always, in future, it's too late now, we must be that club that always has a supporter on the board. We probably can't raise enough money in this short time to consider fan ownership. I mean, we could probably raise enough to pay to have a supporter on the board even. Somebody, we can invest as the trust or supporters club, maybe $250,000 to have a supporter on the board. But it's got to happen in future. We've been saying this for years and years and years. I only go back just before the Brian Hillier days. And it's been every single time, we've gone through this with Diamandis. I don't want to badmouth anybody, but something has got to change. There has to be transparency. And if there is transparency through supporter representation on the board, we're not going to be in the dark like this again.
I personally think communication is a massive part of that as well. I know we've spoken about it before as a group, and even simple things. And I think it's a good one to bring Rich in on. Even something like this, we're just fans of the club, and this is just one of us having a Zoom account and inviting fans on to have their say. Now, I'd love to say that 10, 15, 20,000 people will watch this. Let's be honest, they probably won't. Last one we did, I think we got upwards of just about 300 people in the end have watched it up until today, which I'm really grateful for, because they've taken the time to watch it. And, some of them have even taken the time to say, I agree with this point, or I don't agree with this point, but we're all fans. And it's that sort of communication that we want the club to give us. You know, we were very critical last time round of the Lee Power radio phone-in, which seemed more scripted than half of the soaps on telly, let's be honest. But through us having this conversation, we got Rich on board, which I'll ask him about shortly. So again, in terms of let's work together, if anyone from, you know, the trust happens to watch this, or if anyone, you know, any fan is invited to take part, we welcome anybody into this, and we would happily talk to anyone else if they wanted to invite us to have the discussion with them. Because we're fans, we know what we want, but obviously we recognise that we can dictate what happens at the club, because at the end of the day, we're not the ones that own it, but we will happily contribute what we can, whether it's ideas, whether it's, you know, a certain level of money that the fans can all chip in together. We just need to know what is going on so we know what we can do. And on the line of communication, as I say, Rich, I know you've said previously that it's a big thing for you, the club communicating to us as fans what's going on.
Yeah, I think you've got enough fans. You got 6,000-7,000 people going to get, obviously not during coronavirus, but before coronavirus, you had 6,000-7,000 consistently going to watch the game. So there's people that love this club, that die for this club, and nobody wants to see it go down into pieces. And something that Power has said the other week about saying that the club is on the brink, fans don't want to hear that. We don't want to hear that, especially if you haven't got anything to back it up on. It's all well and good saying, oh yeah, the club's on the brink, but all right, okay, well, what are the financials then? What's our financial situation? How much have we got in the bank? I mean, you know, like, we're on the brink, right? We're on the brink of what? Relegation? Yeah, we know that. Where's the club? Is there going to be a club next season? Are we going to have a club next season? What's going on? So to come out and leave it on a cliffhanger like that, saying that the club is on the brink, and then every newspaper having it saying Swindon Town are on the brink. I mean, for example, my parents, they don't even watch football, and they were saying to me, oh, Swindon Town's on the brink. I was like, no, we're not. Power's just, you know, I don't know what he's trying to do. I don't know what his game plan is. I don't know what he's trying to do as a club, where he's trying to leave us. So
it's almost quite patronising, isn't it, Rich? It's like, in terms of we're on the brink. I'm not going to tell you why, because nobody out there is a business manager. You know, and it's and that's why it felt like to me. You know, it was almost an insult, if I'm brutally honest, because it's you know, they're there saying we're on the brink financially of what, brink of, you know, and it was almost like he tried to use some sort of business jargon, but it wasn't business jargon. To anybody who owns any business, who runs any accounts, would know that if you're on the brink, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to go bust. You know, there's plenty of tools out there that you can utilize. But yeah, I felt a bit patronised by it, to be totally honest.
My interpretation.
He's not the sharpest tool in the box, honestly. He's not a businessman. He's got so many failed businesses behind him. He's a football agent acting out the role of a football chairman. That's it, basically. And taking the piss.
The way I personally looked at it, and again, I could be deluded with my sort of positive view of everything, but when you consider the court case going on as well, that there's a certain responsibility that the authorities involved have to have. Now, they've said that if I've understood correctly, he's not allowed to sell the club or anything until the trial's finished, which is sometime, is it between October and February, whenever they set a date, something like that. Now, if they've said that, I can only assume that the legal minds that are involved in making that decision have said there is no danger to the club going under in that time. Otherwise, they would say, we have to allow him to sell or the club will no longer exist. So for him to then say we're on the brink, I think doesn't make sense when they're saying the club will be okay to not have its ownership decided until possibly February next year.
I think they're trying to force the hand and get some sort of agreement between Standing Power, Barry, anyone else that's lent him money, or whatever. They've tried. I think he can sell the club if he gets agreement with Standing about what the actual percentage of the share is. So I'm not sure if it was tactical in that respect, where he's trying to maybe get the shares and everything sorted out so that he can sell the club. I think the judge in the last case said that they wouldn't let him put the club into administration. Whether that still stands or not, I'm not sure.
Joe, I'm conscious of obviously giving you the platform to have your say as well. So similar to what I've asked the other guys, when you consider what was asked for by the trust, what do you see as some of the key things, and any ideas you could put forward that whether it's just us or you know, higher profile people could be involved in doing, so that we all work together?
To be honest, I think the three lads here have pretty much hit the nail on the head with everything. I mean, like you say, that radio phone in, that was just, to me, that seemed like communication for communication's sake. So everybody's been shouting that Power's not said anything, so he's come on the radio and just talked a load of crap, really. Nothing useful to anybody. Like I say, I don't know, there's some, he's playing games somewhere along the line, and whether he's doing it right or whether he's doing it wrong, I don't know. But he's, you know, I can't pretend to be very intelligent towards business and things like that. But it just seems to be a lot of playing games and almost a bargaining tool to try and get his way. In terms of what we can do, I can't really add anything else to what the lads here have said. I think, you know, other than stick together, try and, you know, set up a contingency plan if people can raise money or whatever, some sort of fan funded part of the club. But yeah, it's a difficult time to be involved in football, I'm sure. But I think he's definitely exaggerating the fact that we're, so to say, on the brink.
We need a sympathy video with Chris Kamara and Billy Piper. That should do the job.
You get Evo Graham as well.
Yeah. Listen, lads, as always, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. Just to sign off and say, anyone watching this, if you do want to get involved in any of the upcoming ones we do of these, generally they're monthly, just find @Fifey07 on Twitter. Drop me a message. We will more than happily have you involved. All opinions welcomed. It's just like I said at the start, by fans, for fans. But again, thanks for your time this evening, gents. And I look forward to having you all on again to share some very concise opinions very soon, no doubt, if the club continue to provide lots of talking points for us. Thank you.